Nice.
so much, man. That was fun.
Tony Polecastro here. I'm in Andy Power's workshop at Taylor Guitars, and we're about to talk V-Class. He has been so generous with his time, and we're going to start with him kind of just telling me the origins and how it came to be and the thought process, and then I'm going to go ahead and ask him some questions about it, and then what I've been waiting for is to actually play the guitars. I'm super pumped, so let's dive right in, shall we?
Early on in this with this guitar, I mean, this thing's a couple years into the making now.
Yeah.
I got the first guitar done, and I was thrilled and terrified at the same time. Like, oh no. In fact, one of the guys here at the shop actually he heard one of the earliest versions of it and looked me straight in the eye and told me to burn it and never let anybody see it. But this has been going on for a while. So when we started to talk about them, I'd explain how it's working, why it's working, and most people, especially some folks on our marketing team, they'd look at me and just go, no, absolutely not. You are going to explain this guitar. Okay, well, I get it. That's not everybody shares my level of enthusiasm for certain pieces of information. When I build a guitar, I always want the next one I make to be better than the last one I made.
Right.
I want to do a better job. That's what keeps this exciting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps Taylor rewarding and valuable to players. Because there's a lot of instruments where if you pick one up, you go, great, this is cool, but I'm going to buy the oldest one I can find because that one had the most musically valuable assets.
Right.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that in a lot of contexts. And so as a guitar maker, I'm always trying to do a better job. Mm-hmm. So we launched the 800 series guitars at the Winter NAMM of 2014. I come back into my shop and I go, okay, so now what? I'm not dead yet.
Right.
Like, I would like to do a better job building a guitar. And I just lived through the last year of trying to wring every last bit out of a certain design and pushing an entire factory, the world's most arguably technologically advanced factory, to the brink of what it could do. So now I'm going to try and double my efforts. Okay, this will be interesting.
I love that as the first thought. Now what?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. I mean, It's kind of like, okay, you make a record, you drop the record, and then you go, okay, sweet, what now? I guess I'll start writing some more songs.
Right.
You go out on tour to support it, maybe, but maybe not. And so I'm thinking, well, I just pushed like this conventional design, used all the cool guitar making tricks that we could do. How can I get more out of it?
Right.
Like as a player, these are real. I was thrilled because they were good guitars.
Yeah.
They're really cool, and a lot of people loved them. But then I think, okay, well, could I get more of those musically cool attributes?
Uh-huh.
I don't know how, but I could try. And so for me, it actually came in the form of Time with the Ocean, because that's one of the ways that I've been able to learn how things can work.
Uh-huh.
When I watch the way waves move through water, they're moving really slowly, but they kind of act the same way that sound wave, heat wave, light wave, radio wave, any of those other forms will work. They behave more or less alike. And so I went down one morning to a local spot where the surf will get big, and I thought it was going to be amazing. Thought it was going to be great. Like the weather kind of looked maybe a little questionable, but I think like, okay, it's gonna work out. So I go down there. It's like not even light yet. Super early in the morning. I drive down, go out on the bluff, and this storm had blown through the night before, and it's just a horrible mess. It's like just ruined.
Yeah.
I can see there's huge swell in the water. I can see it moving through the water, but the surface is just a destroyed, like, washing machine of a mess.
Uh-huh.
So I'm standing up on the bluff, just kind of pissed off, like bummed,
Yeah.
Going like, I could still be asleep, And so I'm watching it, going, well, I can see the swell. I can see it's there, so I didn't totally blow the call. It was kind of okay, but this is still kind of what my guitars are doing. I'm still kind of getting there. There's a lot of potential here, and I'm going in the right direction, but it's not totally good yet. My guitars still have a level of chaos. They still have a level of unpredictability that I don't like. There's still like things to work on. Okay, so it's an interesting lesson to learn. Okay, there's still more to be done. A couple days go by. I go, the weather cleans up. I go to check the surf in another spot. And it's a different setup where there's this big jetty. It's up in Oceanside, the South Harbor jetty. And it's kind of like the tail end of the same swell. There's a ton of surf in the water. Weather's amazing. So the surface of the water is like super smooth, just pristine and beautiful. And surf is just pumping. It's just peeling off on either side of the jetty, just freaking out, just awesome. And so I'm looking at it, pulling a suit on, going, oh, this is kind of what I want the guitar to do. Like, I want this aspect. This is so predictable and so regular and makes so much sense. This is what I'm actually looking for a guitar to do. So that's where the idea initially came from, is I literally duplicated what that one surf spot looks like.
Right.
In the form of a guitar. I drew a picture of it in my shop book. I can show you later. And so I thought, okay, well, this could be kind of interesting. Okay, now, the guitar itself, what I was trying to fix was, I knew I had this, I call it a struggle, but I know that there's this balance point between what we call volume and what we call sustain.
Right.
Okay, that's what a musician would call it.
Right.
Think about where sustain comes from for a minute. Like, I use this analogy of describing it as a Les Paul. Okay, well, it's obvious. You go way back in guitar history and go look at Les Paul's early log experiments. Yeah. Merle Travis, any of those guys going, look, make it thin and solid like a steel and it'll just keep ringing forever. Right. Well, yeah, of course. Because if you look at the guitar as a string holder and you stretch a string across it, if this thing is really rigid, the string's inertia doesn't get absorbed. Right. It just keeps moving.
Right.
So the string will just stay in motion for some kind of obscene amount of time.
Yeah.
So you look at a Les Paul and you go, the thing's super rigid, big old fat neck, super rigid bridge.
Yeah.
Like everything is really strong and kind of beefy. And that guitar will be famous for its sustain to the degree that we make fun of it in Spinal Tap. Right? Right? I mean, you know the bit though, go out to get a bite to eat, come back and it's still going.
It's still raining.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I go, okay, well, that's where sustain comes from. I mean, a physicist will use different terms, but they'll agree if you have a structure that's very rigid and you stretch something elastic across it, that thing's inertia will not be absorbed.
Right.
So that's where length of note comes from. Okay, well, that's a useful quality because you can always play a note shorter. You can always choke it off.
Right.
Okay, you just can't stretch it. It's kind of like a board stretcher.
Yeah.
You can't really do that. Okay, so then think for a minute, if that was one end of the spectrum, think of the other end. What is volume? I mean, it's kind of like the birds and the bees talk for sound. Go, Daddy, where does volume come from?
Right.
Well, okay, so volume is air pressure. It's a change in air pressure. That's what'll hit. That's what will hit your eardrum. That's what sets it in motion. Uh-huh. And the amplitude or how much change in air pressure is what we determine as volume.
Right.
Okay, so think for a minute, what do you need in order to displace that much air? You need a membrane, a surface that's flexible.
Right.
Because otherwise it won't move.
Right.
Right? So think of a drum. you hit this thing, and it can make a huge amount of air pressure change.
Right.
Or a banjo.
Right.
Think of a banjo. You have a drum head with strings sitting on it. That thing can make an enormous amount of volume, but the note is like super short.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's so flexible.
Right. Right.
Okay. So you can see there's like a conundrum here. It's like this scale. We go, okay, well, length of note lives on this side.
Yeah.
Has no volume until you amplify it.
Right.
Power of note comes from this side that has no length.
But you want it all.
You want both of those are okay. Both of those are useful attributes.
Right.
I mean, basically, more sustain is useful because you can play a note short, but you can't stretch it.
Right.
More volume is useful because you could play quietly, but you can't really play louder than the thing is capable of going.
Right. Right.
Until you put a mic on it or some other means. Okay. So those two things, they translate to dynamic range or maybe expressive range. Both of those are musically useful attributes. So I, as a guitar maker, I want them.
Right.
I want them in increasing amounts. So usually you just pick somewhere in the middle. You know, okay, if you were building a flamenco guitar, you lean a little closer to one side. Classical guitar, you go the other way. Steel string guitar, somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And you know, they're not terribly rare attributes. We've all heard long sustaining guitars. We've all heard loud guitars, but it's rare to hear them both together.
Right.
So that's what I was trying to fix. Taken into a physical attribute, I go, well, I need a guitar that is very strong, so the notes can last a long time, or very rigid, and very flexible. How do you build that?
That statement in and of itself sounds like an incredible juxtaposition.
Well, it is. That was actually what I had written in my shop notebook when I drew this picture, is I was struggling with this going, these are opposite characteristics. How can one thing have these two characteristics?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So usually we build guitars with like this big X-brace thing. That's a balance between the two.
Right.
It's not really strong in any direction, and it's not really flexible in any direction. It's kind of a balancing point where you go, yeah, it's kind of in the middle. It's pretty good balance. And so I thought of this way where I go, okay, what if I treated different parts of the guitar almost more systemically? So rather than asking one top to do everything and building it with a structure that tries to do everything, what if I build it with a structure that allows certain parts of it to do certain things and other parts to have these other characteristics? So essentially I made the middle of the guitar very, very strong. So I made the guitar parallel to the strings really strong.
Right.
So the notes would last long. And then I made it flexible in other ways so that it could make a lot of volume.
Right.
That was really interesting. Because then I have this guitar where every note, even if I play it quietly, will have power. It'll also have sustain. Like, let's say I'm going to work with just the weak notes. So I'll demo it with just the stuff that you never would do. Every guitar, you can play an open position E major and some bluesy thing, and it's flattering to everything.
Yeah.
We'll go the other way. This stuff usually would make me sound like a weenie. But this E natural 9th fret G string, I'll play it really quietly. It'll kind of last until I want it to.
Right.
So I'll stop it before I let it
Yeah.
go all the way. If I start going up an E major scale, every single note will have as much power and as much sustain as I want it to have.
I will say that that's the first I've heard this guitar in person.
Yeah.
I have not, since I got here, I did not hear anything.
No, we made sure of it.
Yeah.
So now I have this guitar where I could play high notes. And you know, usually they just disappear.
Yeah, yeah.
These ones, if I want it to last a long time, I'll just hang on it. So the whole guitar, it has this level of balance where every note starts to do what you want it to do.
Wow.
So of course, yeah, you can play your open position chords and you can do that. It's flattering to every guitar.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. You could lean right into the weak parts of a guitar. Okay, so that's all really cool.
Yeah.
Because now you go, geez, that's great. I have bigger dynamic range and I have a really long sustain. Those are both really useful characteristics.
Absolutely.
Some of the other stuff I'd been kind of struggling with for a long time. I got like halfway through building this first guitar and went, oh my gosh. That means that all these other pieces that I haven't known how to incorporate, once I have control or a level of independent control over these two attributes, it allows me to work these different things into the mix. So let's talk about the intonation for a minute. That's probably the thing that most people are called skeptical of.
Yeah. Oh,
It doesn't make sense.
absolutely.
Right? It totally sounds like complete and utter baloney. I get it. I totally get it. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I would have been
Yeah.
15 years ago. Okay? But here's something I learned. I first learned about the problem. I didn't know how to fix it. So I never talk about it. Because you don't want to point something out that you don't know how to fix. Right? That's kind of a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
But what would happen is I would build a guitar. Let's say I'd build a solid body electric guitar. Or I'd repair one. I'd work on one, set it up, whatever. And I'd go to compensate strings. You know, let's say you're setting a Les Paul up, the last thing you do is you do the intonation work.
Right, right.
Because everything affects it,
Yeah.
magnetic sensitivity, all these things. So I'd compensate my saddles and get everything dialed in. Intonation would be glorious. It would be so good. I could get a really, really accurate set of notes out of a guitar.
Uh-huh.
If I built an archtop guitar that I'd carefully tuned, I could do the same thing. I'd go through, I'd set up my Peterson strobe tuner, I'd get it like dialed like, this is so good. Like super, super good. I'd go to build a flat top acoustic guitar and I'd get all the way at the end, I'd set everything up with the same level of accuracy.
Uh-huh.
I'd get my string compensation exactly where it should be. And you know what? The intonation was somewhat less awesome. It's like kind of a disappointment where you go,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's good. It's good. I can measure it. I can see it on my tuner. I know it's good. But it doesn't sound as good. It's not as accurate on this flat top guitar that I just built as on the solid body electric that I built. Why is that? It's not as good on this as, say, the archtop guitar I just built.
Right.
Why is that? Well, I'm compensating the strings the exact same way with the same level of accuracy, so it's not that.
This is like exactly when I first heard about the guitars and the term intonation, I was like, what?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So let's redefine what the word intonation is. Okay? Think about that word for a minute. As a guitar player, you tend to equate it to the word compensation.
Absolutely. When you sent that video, I was like, that's it. When you shed the light on the other side of the word that we were choosing not to focus on. When I say we, like guitar players.
As the guitar player community, we live in a world where we equate the word intonation with compensation. that is an incomplete thought. Because as a musician who has played with singers and saxophone players and violin players and all these other instruments, I know that their definition of the word intonation is very different.
Right.
They don't bother with string compensation. That's not part of their vernacular. They're concerned with the accuracy of their pitches. So I went, okay. Well, the word intonation doesn't actually mean string compensation. Certainly the string compensation is part of it.
Right.
Because what you're doing is every time I press a string down, it stretches a little bit, and that would pull the pitch sharp. So to compensate for that, I cheat and lie.
Right.
What I do is I make, say, the saddle go backwards a little bit, effectively lengthening the string's scale length and relatively shifting the frets a little flat.
Right.
So I take the whole lot of them essentially and just shifted them a little flat so that they basically end up in the right spot once the string is stretched all the way to it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's string compensation. The second part of it is what you could describe as, like I use the word harmony. You could describe it as like the accuracy of the pitch or the pitch's identity, how accurate that is. I like the word harmony because that tells me something.
Yeah.
Because what I'm concerned about is the relative accuracy of the notes in relation to each other.
Right. Right.
That's where I hear it, okay? What happens in a guitar, especially a flat top acoustic guitar, this is the reason I had trouble with it for so long, is that a guitar's role in life is to work like a translator. So if I play something on strings, that sound, that vibration is transferred to the guitar via resonance. Okay, now let's talk about what resonance is for a minute. Okay, a resonant frequency or resonance is the tendency for one oscillating or vibrating body to impart its energy and cause another body to vibrate at one frequency more than others. Okay, that's what resonance is. So this thing will drive this thing to vibrate. This vibrating thing will make this vibrating thing start moving at a certain point that it's capable of.
Right.
So the strings are trying to make this body replicate these sounds that the strings are initiating.
Right.
So let's say I played an A440. The guitar is trying to take that A440 and associated harmonics and translate that into sound pressure.
Right. Right. Right.
Hopefully at A440 and related harmonics. It usually doesn't happen because resonance actually works on a bell curve where if you had two bars, like two steel bars, one of them is tuned at A440, the other one is tuned at A440, I could hit one and the other will start ringing.
Right.
But if the second one was tuned at A442, I could hit this one and this one will also start ringing just at a lesser degree.
Right.
So even though they're not perfectly tuned, you'll still get some of that action.
Right.
So typically what happens, you play a note on a string, and the guitar is going to try to give you the closest thing it can, which may or may not be quite right. So you could think of it as a translator that doesn't have a complete vocabulary. So this string, you play a note, the guitar is working as a translator, it goes, well, let me give you the closest thing I've got.
Right.
And that's what we hear.
Right.
Something gets lost in that translation.
Sure.
So what you end up hearing is this slightly distorted effect of the notes you really played. In certain cases, that guitar body will have such a strong tendency to impart its own versions that it'll gobble up other stuff that you actually brought to the strings and never get a chance to hear.
Right, right.
Okay, so Bob will describe it as like this chaotic motion,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. It's like, don't think of a guitar moving like a speaker cone. We wish it would, it doesn't hardly ever do that.
Yeah.
It's actually, you could picture like a wrinkly, ripply piece of tinfoil. This thing is just kind of like rippling and wrinkling and moving all over the place,
Yeah.
throwing out all these funny different resonant frequencies.
Yeah.
Like when you play a note in front of a tuner, it always kind of is like doing this. It's kind of
Yeah, the
fluttering.
waver. Yeah.
It's because the guitar is actually producing all of those different versions
Right.
while it tries to respond to what the string did.
Bob had an interesting parallel when I was talking to him earlier. He was like, if you tried to stand, if you took two 2x4s and an X,
Yep.
and tried to balance that on a croquet ball and stand on it,
Yep.
it'd be a mess. Or like a Bosu ball at a gym, right? That's what we were talking about. And then he said, well, if you go to a playground, stand in the middle of a teeter-totter, pretty quickly you can figure out kind of the ideal spot, and it's not that difficult. And immediately I was just like, it was a great parallel, because I could picture that.
Totally.
You know?
So what ends up happening is when I realized that I could control the guitar in a more systemic way, I could take this concept that I've been struggling with and not knowing how to fix. I realized this gives me a chance to fix it.
Yeah.
Because now I can build this unbelievably cool level of order and harmony or
Right.
pitch accuracy back into a flat top guitar.
Right.
So check this out. Let's say I'm going to demonstrate some simple triad chords, high on the fingerboard, kind of that treacherous no man's land.
Yeah.
I'll play an E major. I'll play all three basic inversions.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see, watch the B string and it'll be the fifth, the third, and the root
Okay.
of different chord shapes. So if I play an E major and let's say double that pesky major third. Hear how every note just sits there and doesn't waver, it doesn't pulse. There's no beating between the notes, that phase pulsing that happens. Every note will just sit there. And with this long sustain and this power, you get to really hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? How about a G major? See how usually you'd have to stretch tune that to make it sound kind of good?
Yeah.
A C major? Every single note will hit us as very in tune. No matter where I play, no matter how I play it. Let's say over 4.5 octaves.
Whoa.
All fifths and octaves should be really bad, but it isn't.
So, that is really cool.
It's a
Cool
little
is actually
weird.
cool is kind of about the lamest word I could use to describe it. It's like crystalline. It's very separated and very, but not in the machine type of separate.
it's
got musicality. It's got actual tonal character.
Here's what's interesting, because it could have. I was a little worried initially that it could go really sterile and bad.
Yeah.
But what I realized was that once the guitar was working as a very fluent translator, with a super accurate level of pitch recognition, in a way, stuff that you normally don't get to hear, overtone content, harmonic content, all of that stuff gets to come out really clearly.
Right.
But check this out. Usually on an acoustic guitar, you can play natural harmonics up to maybe the 5th fret and get the double octave.
Yeah.
That's good. That 5th will be good. That double octave. On this guitar, I'll keep going. So maybe I go with the 5th.
That's insane.
You know the stuff is theoretically there,
Right.
but you can't usually play it because the guitar isn't capable of replicating those particular weak motions. So this guitar, it ends up being like this super flavorful version of everything you start putting into the design. So the tone would start to matter even more.
Crazy. I was just gonna ask you that.
Like the way that you pick it, the type of pick you use,
Yeah.
starts to matter even more. Everything gets really colorful. It's like an exaggerated version of all these sounds that you've played. I mean, we all know it gets bright back by the bridge, but in this case, it'll get even brighter and yet still have a certain musically useful sound to it.
Yeah.
Or if I start playing real far up the fingerboard, maybe with the round edge of the pick, it'll start to develop that warm sound, but retain clarity.
This is so it's there's a lot of worlds colliding in my brain right now.
Yeah.
And let me tell you the first one. So when I was in school, I was going to school for like audio systems design. And one of the big classes was fundamentals of audio.
Yeah.
Where we learned about various stringer lengths and resonating frequencies and Helmholtz resonators and let's just be honest, a lot of it was like, okay.
Yeah, it's the world I live in. It's awesome.
But hearing you actually using terms and kind of the physics model but in a musical way is really fascinating to me because I'm like, oh, there's the application. It's not formulas in a book. It's like this is the fruits of those formulas. Or at least maybe I'm filling in some gaps.
No, it's fun because we tend to make a distinction between science and art.
Yeah.
Right? Like the two have nothing in common.
Right.
Ours is like the first generation that's done that. That was never the case.
Right.
You go back to the Italian Renaissance, man, they are completely inextricably linked. They are like two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
So all those formulas in the books that you'd learned about, the Helmholtz resonators, and the way that those are derived, the way that they're calculated.
Right.
That was to make sense of what you see going on around you. That was trying to quantify the beauty that you hear in music. That was learning about it to a level that you might be able to work with those concepts.
Right.
And use them to your advantage. That's what's going on with this. So yeah, in some ways it seems scientific, but that's why I find it really fascinating that you could take inspiration or take design cues from watching the ocean and go, oh, well, it works like this in this case.
Right.
And I can simply observe that and impart it into this case, and it works the same way. That's kind of cool. It's like this is a common language.
Yeah.
That we want to work with.
So the other thing that's happening in my brain right now is as I literally picture you like running from your house with guitar in hand, like, guys, check this out. Was there a magic moment, or was this just, obviously it took some time to develop, try, test, but was there a magic moment where you're like, okay, time to take a trip down the shop and show the guys and gals?
I built the first guitar and scared the heck out of myself because I realized halfway through, like, oh my gosh, these parts are actually going to do what I thought they were going to do. And if that's the case, then I could make these tweaks and incorporate these other ideas that I've been struggling with.
Yeah.
Like, I'm freaking out, having my guitar geek moment. And I wrap it up and, decorate it like a flat top guitar, finish it like a flat top guitar.
Sure.
Brought it down here to the shop. And I was sitting like about 10 feet over.
Okay.
I'm playing it. And Bob usually parks his car right outside my door here. It gives us an excuse even on a busy day to catch up a little.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there playing this thing, and he walks through the door, gets like halfway across the room, and just turns and stops. He goes, "What changed?" I kind of start chuckling. He goes, "No, seriously, what changed?" So I just keep playing. And he goes, "It was like every day of my life I've been walking through a door with a squeaky hinge. Somebody just oiled the hinge." something is missing. So that annoying something, whatever that was, just disappeared.
Yeah.
So I had to start explaining more from then. Like, well, you better sit down. Let's go make some coffee.
Yeah.
Like there's a bit of an explanation here.
And so it's really stunning, and I'm glad that I didn't have a chance to hear it until right now, because it's a very different experience.
It is. I mean,
it's a very different experience.
So the thing is, a lot of people, they're going to go into shops, they'll pick the guitar off the wall, and they'll strum their chords. And that's great. They should do that. Because even an average, someone who's just learned their first 3 chords, they'll play those and go, wow, those chords sound really good. They're very harmonious, very in tune. I like that.
Yeah.
Other guitars won't be quite so in tune as that. That's fine. But what's been really fascinating for me is to realize, well, all those characteristic weak spots that you learn even subconsciously to avoid.
Yeah.
And this guitar, you can go right to them because they're not weak. I mean, we typically stay away from these notes because they suck.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah, I mean, you want them to be good.
Yeah.
But they usually are like thin and plinky, and they're kind of masked by this big hollow low end like woof thing.
Yeah.
That just kind of swallows them right up.
Right.
Yeah. This guitar won't do that.
So now I've got a lot of questions for you.
Shoot.
You're sitting in your shop. Guitars are X-braced. Okay.
Yeah.
It's almost written in stone.
Yeah.
It feels that way.
Totally.
And I was talking to Bob earlier about this, and it was very interesting the way that he put it, in that guitar makers are wanting to make their guitars sound better.
Yeah.
You just want to make the next guitar better. Just
totally.
as you said.
You want it to make it sound better than the last one.
And he said his version of this, and I'm asking you this because I want your take on it. He said that instead of asking, how can I make this guitar better, which is a fairly nebulous term, you asked a very different question in the start of the process of developing this brace. In that, how can you manage things to bring out certain aspects of the guitar? And in doing so, instead of starting with an X brace, you started with essentially a blank slate. Was that was that intimidating? I mean, and I say this from the traditionalist kind of standpoint of like, yeah, guitars are X brace. Cool.
Yeah.
Where can we shift it around to make it sound different?
No, I never thought of it as intimidating. It's what I do. Okay, let's start with some more background. I built electric guitars.
Yeah.
I have a lot of practice building acoustic archtop guitars. I built a lot of those. I really love it.
Yeah.
They're kind of like they do it for me.
Yeah.
I built mandolins. I built ukuleles. I built classical guitars. I built some bouzouki. I built some requintos. Built a lot of different instruments.
Yeah.
None of those are X-braced. Why not? Why not take some archtop guitar? Archtop guitars are awesome. They work really good. They weren't around when the X-brace was developed. We had no concept of that.
Right.
The modern mandolin wasn't around when we built X-brace guitars. We had no idea about that. Recorded music wasn't really around.
Right.
Electric guitars, any electric instrument wasn't around.
Right.
Let alone synthesizers and auto-tune vocals and all the other things that we live with nowadays. None of those were around.
Right.
So in some ways, I'd like to say that I think it was Isaac Newton who wrote, "Science can stand on the shoulders of giants, and in doing so, look forward." Well, yeah, that's what we get to do. Like, I'm really fortunate as a guitar maker alive now because look at all the information I have access to. Like, okay, I don't really spend much time with the internet, but I've found that books can be very wonderful repositories of information. And people write books.
They do. They're still around.
Yeah, and the information that tends to go into them is usually pretty high quality, not always totally accurate. But you could look through some of the books that have been written in the last 30 years. The guys Bob's age never had a chance to learn from when they were young.
Yeah.
The historical accounts of the instruments we love, going into the biographies of some of these makers, the biographies of some scientists who contributed to the art form, to the collectors and the players and the playing styles, the role of music in society in the last 100 years, and all of that stuff I've had access to. So I look at that and go, well, why not? The other side is that I don't have an experience in my life where there was never a time when I wasn't playing and building. The two of them are tied to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
So for me, it's always been a very valuable thing to play a guitar. I don't have to translate into like physical attributes what that is.
Right.
So like if I go, I play this guitar, yeah, the neck funky neck shape is wrong. I don't have to try and describe what was wrong about it. I know what was wrong. So I go, okay, well, this one has too much V, and you blended the neck shape at the here and should have blended it over here, and you didn't roll it into the fingerboard surface like this. For me, I know that. I don't have to try and explain it to somebody. So for me, I would never think twice about going, well, I want a guitar to sound better. What is a better sound? Well, I want more musically useful attributes. That's what sounds better, is musically useful characteristics. Okay, well, in this case, I want volume and sustain. Okay, because those two aspects translate into really good expressive range of a guitar.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do I make good volume? How do I make good sustain? Well, that manifests itself as this and this. That's where I'm struggling.
right.
This is a problem. These two things are opposite each other, you know? So that's it. I mean, in some ways, okay, Bob's right. I would ask a different question and go, how do I make it sound better? Well, what is a better sound?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll quantify it in those terms and then say, how can I change this physical attribute to result in this characteristic?
Yeah.
That's easy. So I don't know, I never thought of it.
It's so interesting to kind of get the inside scoop on this, because I almost feel like if we had a diagram of Andy Powers' brain, it'd be like
really
music
confused.
and art, and then the science piece, and somehow they're not really separate.
No, they wouldn't be on separate sides. They're mixed together.
Yeah, it's like this mash.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to hear you talk about it, because, and I maybe I'm jumping to a conclusion here, but it seems like you build from the merging of those two, and one obviously influences the other. And it's a two-way street essentially.
Yeah, I've always described the relationship between makers and musicians as a two-way street.
Yeah.
Because musicians will ask for something, then makers respond, and hopefully they could give something that was more than a musician could ask for.
Yeah.
And then it allows a musician to go make something new.
Right.
You look at Leo Fender with the Strat.
Right.
I mean, he's thinking of guys like Eldon Chamblin as a rhythm guitar player, doing an amazing job playing country western tunes. Probably didn't have Jimi Hendrix in mind.
Right.
But I'm really glad that he made what he made so that Jimmy could do his thing.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
But yeah, for me, they're mixed. The goal of making an instrument is so that it can make great music. That's what it is. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
That's what got me interested in it. You look at a guitar. I mean, as a kid, I looked at a guitar. My parents had a guitar. I like that it's made of wood. I like the shape of it. I like the songs that come out of that thing. I like what it stands for. I like the way that people play it. I like the joy that they get when they play it. It's a lot of fun when everybody's around playing songs.
yeah,
That's what makes a guitar good.
absolutely.
So yeah, they're mixed to me.
There's like a flood of questions that I have, and one of them is really, one of them comes from just a personal curiosity in that because the guitar market, for lack of a better term, guitar players are so trained to accept the X brace and the inherent problems that it has. Was it scary to you to bring this out to the public? I mean, were you like, here goes nothing, and then like turn and run the other way?
Yeah, a little bit, because I kind of figured like, well, whenever, at least historically, we tend to flog people, we tend to excommunicate people, we burn them at the stake, we sentence them to house arrest, we lock them in closets, we lock them in prison cells. Anybody who changes the way that we think about things or do things tends to be shot first, and then they ask questions later.
Right.
I'd like to think that the guitar world is a little different than that. I mean, this is not a conceptual reconstruction of the solar system.
Right.
I get it. I'm not trying to say that, hey, the world is round, it is not flat. I'm not trying to say that. It's just a guitar. It's meant for having fun with. It's meant for making music.
Right.
Just a guitar.
Right.
You want controversy? Get into politics.
Right.
You'll have plenty of it. This was never meant to be that. But at the same time, I realized, okay, here it goes. Okay, this is going to be there's going to be some mudslinging, I'm sure. I get it. Because, man, I'm a traditionalist. I love guitars.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a really nice conversation with TJ Thompson at the NAMM show.
Oh, nice.
He's a Martin Restore guy.
Yeah.
Brilliant craftsman. So good. Really thoughtful, insightful guy. And we were geeking out over some details about some things. And he's one of the rare guys that I get to talk to because I can relate. I've worked on a lot of traditional guitars.
Yeah.
I've put a lot of old guitars back together for collectors and museums and things like that. I love those guitars.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore them. But at the same time, the musician in me goes, yeah, they're really musically useful. That's what makes them cool.
Right.
What if I made other musically useful things? That would be cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sure, whatever. If it sounds good, why not?
So I think you kind of answered this already, but I want to ask it just for the record. V-class versus X-bracing. Does V-class in some future down the road replace X-bracing? Do they live side by side? Do we find out that V-class isn't what it's cracked up to be? I mean, I don't think that's the case, judging by what I'm listening to, but I think it's a valid question.
I don't think so either, but at the risk of sounding like a politician, it's not for me to decide.
Right.
Musicians will play it. They are the ones who will decide whether or not it is musically useful in the way that I think it is. As a musician, I find it's really interesting. The people who I've handed it to and they play it, they find it really interesting. Dealers, guitar restorers, kind of the knowledgeable people that I've handed these guitars to, they think it's a wonderful thing because immediately they can hear the musical usefulness of it.
Right.
So I think it's got a long future ahead of it. Certainly here at Taylor Guitars, we're going to use it.
Yeah.
We're going to incorporate it into a lot of different designs.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me as a builder that it gives me so much flexibility to make different voices. So like these initial ones that we've released, these are very, what I'd call modern sounding guitars.
Yeah.
They're very, like almost piano-like.
Yeah.
They're very modern guitars.
Yeah.
This idea allows me enough flexibility to keep the good parts of this guitar and make very traditional sounding guitars with this level of intonation, this dynamic range, this sustain, these like musically useful characteristics.
Yeah.
But flavor the sonority of the guitar to be very traditional, like bluegrass kind of a thing.
Interesting.
Or traditional finger style kind of deal.
Yeah.
It gives me a lot of flexibility because it starts to exaggerate different colors.
Right.
So you put the right woods together, the right nuances on the parts, flavor that design a little different, and you have a totally different sound. In fact, once we're finished up here today, I'll show you a couple that are very, very different flavors that use the same idea.
So this will be applicable on other sizes.
Totally.
And it's in terms of the general bracing pattern will be similar.
Yeah,
But
almost identical.
really,
It can be a really, really similar version. Look how many different versions of an X brace guitar you have. They're all basically alike,
yeah, yeah.
but how many different versions of an X brace guitar do you have? Like a
Scallop,
million?
Scallop, non-scallop, forward shifted, rear shifted.
What does that even mean? You're like, forward from what?
Yeah, right.
Rearward shifted from what?
Right.
Scalloped where?
Right.
How?
Yeah.
To what degree? There's all kinds of different versions.
Yeah.
This will allow that many different flavors that have that many different musical, useful applications.
Right. Well, it's funny. The reason I laugh is because we've been talking about this today, and to be quite honest with you, I came in with more of a curiosity than a skepticism of like, what is this really going to sound like in person? And I'm glad I'm here. I'm very thankful that I'm here to hear it firsthand. But it's funny because we've been talking about it, and once you kind of take the whole, well, whatever's under the hood, that can sit over here. How does it actually sound? Then it's almost irrelevant. Like, yeah, I used popsicle sticks on that one. Well, it sounds killer. Neat.
Yeah, totally. But for me, the proof is in the playing.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I don't like when somebody buys a guitar based on its specifications.
Yeah.
That's just lame. I mean, imagine trying to pick out your favorite record based on its specifications. I like songs in the key of G that are in 4/4 timing, that have an 8-bar breakdown in the middle 8 right after the solo, but the solo should be 16 bars because I like. Nobody's gonna pick out their favorite song by its specifications.
Right.
You listen to it and you go, I like that one. I don't really like that one.
Right.
That's what you should do with a guitar. You pick the guitar up, you play it, you pick the one that you like.
Yeah.
These guitars, really, the proof is in the playing.
Yeah.
You have to actually hold one, try it. The only caveat there is don't be afraid to do things that you haven't done before.
Right.
Because with these new characteristics, a lot of things that just used to not sound good sound really good. Like I've been tripping out just over major 7 chords.
Yeah.
Going, okay, my whole life I've voiced an E major 7 like that because you get to keep that D sharp and E natural away from each other.
Yeah.
It sounds really nice.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to describe it to students as, well, they're two people who don't like each other, but when they have mutual friends, they can tolerate each other at a party. That's kind of how those notes are.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what if instead you might voice it like this and put them right next to each other? Boy, that's an interesting flavor.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's totally useful.
Gross in a good way.
Yeah, it becomes really interesting.
Yeah.
So there was, right before Christmas, we went back to Blackbird Studio in Nashville and had some different artists come in to come check these out.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
And it was pretty fun because none of those guys had seen this guitar. I hadn't talked to any of them ahead of time.
Yeah.
But they're great players, guys. I admire their playing styles a lot. And so I introduced them to the guitar and let them start exploring it. I forget, it might have been Danny who goes, "Oh man, I've been worried about this all week." He goes, you guys called and said, "Oh, will you come check this guitar out?" And he goes, "I've just been freaking out, going, oh, really? I gotta go think of something cool to say about an inlay pattern or whatever change." Like, okay. He goes, he's like, I don't even have a whole sentence to put together because I just don't even know what just hit me.
I can't even exist right now.
He's like, all of a sudden I get to put major thirds back into chords.
Yeah.
He goes, I know that much. I can put major thirds back into chords because they don't suck.
Exclamation point. So another question, and I think that will come up because of just overall speculation, is structurally.
What'll happen over time?
What'll happen over time?
I could show you the first one that I built that's been hanging around for the last couple of years.
Uh-huh.
One of the interesting side effects of making certain parts very rigid, the whole guitar actually got a lot more stable.
Really?
They don't move as much.
No kidding.
Yeah, so you look at like the top of a guitar and go, well, of course, because it's not working in the same way, you don't have to rely on that same like guitar maker's tradition. I mean, how many times have you heard a great guitar is built right on the edge of blowing up?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's some truth to that
Yeah.
in the way the guitars are conventionally made.
Right.
The way these guitars are made, it's not working in that with those same mechanics. Because those guitars, essentially the top needed to form a subtle S shape
Okay.
in order to get what you really want out of it.
Mm-hmm.
These guitars, they're not doing that. So you don't need it to be quite so flexible, quite so, you're not like dancing on thin ice.
Right.
So essentially the guitar got really strong and really stable in a lot of ways.
That is awesome to hear, because that was one of my first. And then the reason I say that, well, a lot of what I've heard people asking was, okay, let me see it in 5 years or whatever.
Totally.
Because I think that's any time there's a major change like that, it's like, oh, well, of course, it'll explode or spontaneously combust. But what I've always been told, and I could be wrong, and that's why I'm asking, is essentially a guitar wants to fold in half for its entire life.
Yeah, it does.
And when I first saw that V series, the V-class bracing, I saw the open area here, and I was like, wait a minute, how?
Yeah.
So how is it a physics kind of like push-pull thing?
Go back to the very first part of the conversation. The way to make a string stay in motion for a long time is to make the guitar very rigid, parallel to strings. This guitar is very, very strong parallel to strings. And so the strings don't have nearly the chance that they used to have to try and tug the guitar apart. How many solid body guitars have you seen fold up?
About 0.
Yeah, that's kind of what'll happen. You're gonna see some witness lines develop, kind of like a classical guitar,
Okay.
because of the way the different pieces of wood will expand and contract.
Okay.
And they don't expand and contract at exactly the same rate based on their thickness and whatnot.
Sure.
But structurally, the guitar is going to stay in really healthy shape for a very long time.
That's outstanding to hear. Can I play one yet?
Sure.
I've been dying to give it a shot. And I'm going to hit the G, the fantastic G.
You notice how that high E string has just as much power as the low one?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's insane. That's actually
weird.
insane. That's very weird.
Rotate your pick around.
Wow.
Huge change, isn't
Well, it
it?
responds way more so. I mean, you'll notice
Yeah.
that. I think you'll notice that on a guitar that
Every
it'll
guitar,
change. But
it'll change. But like I said, in this case, all of those changes become more exaggerated. The colors became more intense, is what happens. There's something else I want to show you. This, you'll have to walk off the camera for
Yeah.
it. This guitar is going to get louder the farther away you walk from it. Sounds
I'm going.
bizarre.
I'm going.
Okay, check this out. I'll start playing some chords, and as you walk to the far corner of the shop, that's from here, that's almost 30 feet diagonally.
Okay.
The guitar will have the perception, it'll hit you as though it was getting louder, despite all the junk that's in between it. Check it out. I could even get quieter, and it'll still carry that far.
That's pretty awesome. Because there's machines going as well.
Is that weird or what?
Well, not only so
It's like
you
yeah,
notice
I
the
know there's-
volume, but the clarity is retained as well. It's not
Yeah.
a mush. It's not like a mash.
Yeah, that's a function of that order aspect that you talked to Bob about.
Yeah.
Guys in lab coats will call it harmonic coherence. Sounds fancy.
Yeah.
But basically what it means is if you are a sound wave, there's strength in numbers. Okay, so if you think about it in terms of like light coming off a light bulb,
Yeah.
usually light will propagate from an incandescent light bulb uniformly in every direction, every single visible frequency. Okay, so that's why they call it full spectrum lighting.
Right. Right.
Okay, so it's like an infinite number of light wavelengths. And they'll propagate outward according to the inverse square law. So the farther away it goes, the more diffused it is because it's spread over a larger surface area.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not the way that a lot of other light sources work. So like an LED light or a laser beam or something. Those produce waveforms that have a lot in common. They're very similar. When you do that, it goes far because all of the sound waves in this case will strengthen each other.
That's really cool.
Is that
And
weird?
it's
or
really
what?
it's
a very
true.
real effect.
It's a very real effect, and that's the.
Like I said, once I realized the parts aren't working the way that I think they're
Yeah.
going to work, oh my gosh, this would allow me to do all kinds of cool,
So-
crazy stuff. This is going to get really interesting really quick.
So, other than go out and play a V-class guitar, somebody that's criticizing it, somebody that just is like, no, X brace to the grave type.
Good for them.
That's kind of the response. Like, musical tool, go for it.
Totally.
Awesome.
Really, to me as a guitar maker, if somebody has a guitar they absolutely love, and they love playing it, they love the feel of it, they love the response of it, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
They should play that guitar. I don't care whether I made it or somebody else made it.
Sure.
They should go play that one. But there are those of us who aren't always totally happy with what we're playing.
Right.
Where you go, gee, I wonder what would happen if I had the ability to play something else. What would happen if I could revoice some chord shapes? What would happen if I could play some of the harmony that I play on a piano that sounds terrible on a guitar?
Right.
What if I could bring some of that into the music? What if I had a guitar that didn't suck on a track? Like, how many times have you recorded an acoustic guitar and you have the rest of this carefully put together song where there's vocal parts, there's synth parts, there's bass, there's all this stuff, and all of it, okay, well, it's tuned according to the system of equal temperament. They're
Yeah.
all very accurate pitches. And you get this acoustic guitar and you go, I cannot make this thing fit with all of this stuff.
Right.
I'm playing this chord shape for the chorus of the song, so I'll tune for that. And then I'm going to stretch tune to make this shape chord work in the verses.
Right.
And I'm going to try and like do collage recording to see if I can get this acoustic guitar part and smash it into the rest of this tune.
Right, right.
Well, okay, guitars don't work awesome in every environment.
Right.
What if we built one that could?
I,
In a way, it's a guitar that kind of, it keeps in mind the way that people are using their guitars now.
right.
We use our guitars in different ways than we did 100 years ago.
Very true.
Let me show you this. Okay, this is another version.
I've been just sneaking peeks of that.
Okay. This is another version. It's a totally different flavor, different voice than that.
Yeah.
It's V class, but when I build a guitar, in real simple terms, there's two ways I can make it better. I can make it sound better, or I can make it feel better.
Yeah.
So we're addressing the sonic aspect of it. This is addressing more of the feel, the touch it aspect of it. Okay, so when I play in front of microphones, I usually start sweating and I squeak.
Yeah.
So that's a problem because you end up ruining takes because you're
Yeah.
squeaking. In the world of guitar specs, this is not satin finished and it's not gloss finished. It's kind of in between the two.
Okay.
But the point is that it doesn't make weird sounds
Okay.
when you touch it. Armrest is cool, but I bet you haven't seen it on the other hand.
No, I haven't. On electric guitars, yeah, sure.
Yes, honestly, it's stolen straight out of the electric guitar world. That's where I took it. I went, I'm going to take some of my electric guitar making and I'm going to put it into this because I don't like that when I go up to play high notes on this guitar, the high notes actually sound good, so
Right.
you want to use them.
Right.
Usually your thumb goes on that side of the fingerboard,
Yeah.
right? Classical musicians call it thumb position. The rest of us just do it and don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But when you start to press down, that means you're using your whole elbow.
Yeah.
Your dexterity is out the window.
Right. Right.
In this case, by scooping out all this business, I can get to the end of the fingerboard and still get some thumb on the neck. And not transition as I go down.
That's awesome.
All the edges of this guitar are treated more like a violin. Totally
Nice.
different edge treatment. So
Yeah.
instead of sharp corners, everything's been trimmed off. So it's more comfortable to touch and to hold.
Man.
We call this one a builder's edition. It's kind of like the director's cut, sort of an idea. Like, well, okay, if you can do whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
what would that be? Well, I want to make it feel good too.
Man, it's stunning looking. You know, I definitely have noticed, and you probably have too, in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, the popularity of satin finishes kind of creeping up,
Yeah.
and people are really digging the look of it.
I like that.
It's a really elegant look.
Have you, I mean, because I have an experience with other instruments outside
Yeah.
the guitar world. Have you ever seen a new violin finished with full gloss? Or a satin finished violin?
No.
No. We don't do that. You know, it's kind of funny. I mean, guitars came of age in during the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So they've always been like a factory industrialized sort of deal.
Yeah.
That is so not the way of instrument makers. We live in the world of make a finish that's beautiful, that's pleasant to touch, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of getting back towards that. It's going, yeah, it's a finish that sounds good, it feels good,
Yeah.
it looks nice, it's pleasant when I touch it, it doesn't make any non-musical weird sounds.
Right. Right. That's a torrefied top, correct?
Yeah, this one's roasted.
That's it's a beautiful piece of spruce.
Yeah, Steve
It's
McMahon
gorgeous.
cut that one. It's lovely. He does an
It's
amazing job
really-
cutting spruce.
It's beautiful. And I mean, it's funny to say that about spruce because usually it's just like, oh, look at the back and sides, but it's a really gorgeous piece of spruce. And it's true to form. It really is. It's.
That's straight.
I'm not saying this because you guys brought me here. I really am not. It's a.
That one's cool with roasty spruce. It's funny, the thing is so in tune that even that sympathetic resonance from the open strings ringing,
Right.
those notes will even be in tune with what you play.
So usually I'll mute.
Yeah.
I'll just push a finger up to just take
Yeah,
care of the
totally.
low string or
You don't
something like
have
that.
to
You don't
if you
have
want
to.
to.
It's kind of gross. It's like, it's disgusting.
It's a little weird, right?
There's a lot going on in my brain right now. There's a lot to process here.
Well, I mean, it's a little hard to turn into like sound bite-sized messages, but
Yeah.
I figure I've been working with some of these ideas for the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
So I've been stewing in this sauce a while, trying to figure out, I don't know, I've got this puzzle piece, but boy, it sure doesn't mix with the ones next to it. Till you rotate them just the right way and you go, whoo, look at the picture emerging from that. That is cool.
So, do you come away with feeling like you cracked the code?
No.
Or do you come away with feeling like this is one step in the right direction?
Oh man, it feels like you're reading along page after page, and then you kind of get the sense of like, get towards the end of something, and you turn over a page and you go, oh, it wasn't the end of the book, it was the end of chapter 1. Awesome. Chapter 2. Sweet. Because like I said earlier, what this allows me to do as a builder is there's huge uncharted territory ahead to make all kinds of other things and other flavors that we haven't heard yet, other styles of guitar,
Yeah.
other guitars with different capabilities that we haven't had yet. That's really exciting. It's really like, okay, these are the first couple of versions that we're launching.
Yeah.
That's not the end of the book.
Right.
That's step 1.
I love
There
that.
is all kinds of interesting stuff coming.
Well, this is a hell of a chapter 1. Then let me say that. Wow. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to entertain questions, but also explain the process,
Yeah, it's
the
my pleasure.
origins, and of course, letting me play these fine instruments.
Should we play a tune?
Let's do a tune.
What do you want?
Let's do. Do you know Big Sciota?
Played it once.